This is Colin O'Keefe here for LXBN TV. In the state of Alabama, same-sex marriage is making a lot of headlines, both locally and nationally. But as the state makes news on the issue, another national story has flown a little bit under the radar as the Department of Labor has extended key family and medical leave benefits to couples in legal same-sex marriages. Joining me to discuss from Birmingham is attorney Ann Yanger. She's with Bradley Arant Bolt Cummings, an author on the firm's blog, Labor and Employment Insights. And first off, can you explain what's changed for employers when it comes to benefits here, and what are your recommendations for action steps?
Well, first of all, employers have been trying to deal with this issue for several years now with employees who are in same-sex relationships or who maybe had gotten married outside of the state and returned. And so they've been trying to figure out exactly how to do that. One of the things that they were trying to deal with was a good employee who they want to retain, who they're having trouble offering those benefits to. And then they would also, as you mentioned, the FMLA specifically only applied to spouses. So if you had someone who was not legally married under some states' law, they weren't covered by the FMLA. I had a situation with one client who had a long-term employee that they liked very much, who was in a same-sex relationship, whose partner was terribly ill, and they were trying to find how to give her those benefits, that leave, but she wasn't covered under the FMLA. So employers have been trying to deal with that. A lot of them, just in trying to retain employees, retain talent, have found ways to extend benefit coverage to same-sex partners. But this change in Alabama will actually require them to do it now. And what they really need to do is to review all of their policies to make sure that their policies are properly drafted so that they don't have anything that defines spouse in a way that is inconsistent with the law. They need to look at their insurance contracts to make sure that they don't have a health insurance contract that excludes a same-sex spouse in some way. And then the other thing I think is really important for employers to do is to train their HR people and their supervisors. I think it would be disastrous for any employer to have a supervisor say something along the lines of, oh, now that you're married to somebody who has a same-sex spouse. That's not the message, or even if it is the message that somebody wants to send, it's not a helpful message. It's not a good thing for your workforce. It's not a good thing under the law. The only other thing that I was thinking about that they really need to look at are nepotism policies that might not have applied in the past, where you had a same-sex couple who was not married, but who are now legally married. And so you might have a nepotism policy that applies that you need to consider. I also had an inquiry about a client who was worried about state tax withholding, because under the federal tax withholding, employers started withholding as married for same-sex couples who were married. But under the state law, they didn't have to do that. So they need to look at those issues as well.
I see. And then second, of course, there in Alabama, this has been a little bit of a controversial subject, and you have, judges, or specifically one judge, is doing what he can to avoid recognizing same-sex marriage. Do you anticipate private employers doing something like this, where they say, the government's telling me I have to recognize same-sex marriages and I don't want to? Do you anticipate that type of issue coming up? And if so, what's going to happen there?
I think that most private employers are probably not going to take this issue on. And for two reasons. The first being that it's an expensive issue to take on. To be the poster child on either side of this issue is going to be getting into litigation and then losing control of your message, because all of a sudden you're in litigation or you're being covered in the newspaper. And so I think most private employers want to get their business run and not worry about social policies. The other reason is, and my clients have been dealing with this for several years, as I said, they want to retain talent. And if our talent pool is shrinking kind of nationally, I think most employers don't want to put up obstacles to getting the best talent they can in their workforce. And so I don't think most of them are going to take it on. There could be some that disagree with the decisions, who might support the judges who are not issuing marriage licenses. But at the same time, I think that most of them will look to see what the law requires them to do and do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting issue to watch. On one hand, you make a great point that, people worry that these types of things are bad for business, but really it just widens the talent pool. Then again, we'll have to keep our eyes open to see if there is, that Hobby Lobby for this type of issue. So it's going to be interesting to see how this progresses. Not saying it's going to be there in Alabama. It could really be anywhere where that pops up. So it's going to be an interesting issue to watch for sure. Once again, that was attorney Ann Yanger of Bradley Arent Bolt Cummings. For more of her insight on this subject and from our colleagues as well, be sure to visit babc-employmentlawinsights.com. Thank you for joining me today, Ann.
Thanks, Colin.